Back to Philadelphia.
You might not think that a few simple words could make you crave McDonald's breakfast sandwiches. But if you listen closely to the sound of me saying McGriddles, McMuffin, you might be wrong. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Want to keep little hands busy at home? The Home Depot has free kids workshop kits with everything you need to get started. Pick up a new one in store starting the first Saturday of every month. Then head to homedepot.com/kids for a project guide that's easy to follow along with, plus loads of other kid-friendly content. Kids can't wait to get their hands on them. Find out more at homedepot.com/kids. Free kids workshop kits, only from the Home Depot. How doers get more done. While supplies last, U.S. only.
This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth, for competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty, for the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, a very important show, many things happening. Of course, we now have a President Joe Biden, and we have a Vice President Kamala Harris. Or is it Kamala? I don't know. Either event is bad. In the first day of Biden's presidency, he implemented 17, count them, 17 executive orders. By the way, the number 17 in the Italian culture is a very bad number. It's like 13. And this is where we are today. But I want to go back in time a little bit. I want to talk about 2 weeks ago, Wednesday of this week, the Capitol event. When people went into the Capitol, they were obviously let in by the Capitol Police. The police have been much maligned over the last several years. They've been disrespected. They've been attacked. They've been maimed. They've been killed. There have been basically an insurrection, if you want to call it, use the words of the left, against the police. Now, sure, there may be a few bad eggs. There are a few bad eggs in any organization. That's a fact. But the onslaught against the police obviously took its toll, and the people that went into the Capitol, some of them way out people from Antifa or other groups, but most of these people, ordinary Americans, who had simply had enough, who simply finally came to the realization that all three branches of government are corrupt to the core, particularly the judicial branch, the federal judicial branch, which, as Jefferson predicted, our greatest founding father, would become despots and tyrants because they're unelected and unaccountable to the people. And we can see they refused to address the rampant election fraud, which resulted in Biden and Harris becoming president and vice president. Biden, perhaps the biggest criminal, might even surpass the Clintons in terms of the money that he got laundered through Hunter, his son, into his accounts from communist China. And Kamala Harris, an anti-white racist, someone who will say anything to get elected or to do anything that needs to be done, a pathological liar of the highest magnitude. This is who is now running this country, letting in ultra-leftists, letting the barbarians through our gates, socializing and communizing this country. And that's where we found ourselves. And people saw that that was on the horizon. And they rose up and they sent a warning to the establishments of both political parties that they weren't going to take it anymore. A few windows were broken. Regrettably, some people were killed. That's not the result of most of the people that were there. And this is the house of the American people. This is our capital. It was not a trespass. This was something that belongs to us, not to the representatives in Congress, either senators or congressmen in the Senate or House, respectively. But there has been an emotional backlash, a unjustified inquisition that's being now carried out by the FBI under the auspices of the Biden Justice Department, which now is in total control. And people are being terrorized. And now there's a bill that's been introduced in the House of Representatives, essentially to make white people terrorists, that there's so-called white supremacists out there. They're trying to destroy this country and to destroy the Biden-Harris presidency, as well as the Republican establishment. And at the same time, you have true domestic terrorists, Antifa, rioting and carrying on and maiming, burning and looting in cities like Seattle and Portland. The country has come unglued. Now, everybody deserves the same rights, no matter what race, religion you may be. But the fact is that now if you're a conservative, if you're a person of faith, if you're someone that believes in the vision of our founding fathers, you have now been targeted for extinction, and the FBI is being used to carry that out as well. The forces of the deep state are now at work against the American people, and there is no federal judge in this country that will stop it. We saw what happened with regard to the massive election fraud with the President Donald Trump, former president. They turned their back on him. They didn't do their duty. They violated their oath of office. They committed treason against this country, and that includes the Supreme Court justices that President Trump was bragging about for all these months, Gorsuch, Coney Barrett, and Kavanaugh, as well as lower court justices. And I've written about that in my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. The judges and the justices are the main reason because they fail to adhere to the standards of which they are put in office. And they have abandoned the American people. And that's why Jefferson predicted that every 20 years or so, that they would have to rise up, the American people, and fight another bloody revolution. And he said, what's a few thousand dead to refresh the tree of liberty to preserve freedom? And he didn't want to see that, and I don't want to see that. But that's what we face today. And you can see that in particular, the people in Washington, D.C. are running for the exits. They feel threatened. They're scared to turn their back on the American people. And you know what? They should be afraid of what they've created in Washington, D.C. And while in my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, I propose legal and ethical means to wage a second American revolution, such as citizens' grand juries, a third Continental Congress that we'll talk more about in the second segment of this show. The fact is that the American people are about ready to tear the house down. They're not going to take it anymore. And these people in Washington who were fearful for their own lives created the situation for themselves. Because by and large, the people who are running this government are a bunch of clowns, court jesters, and criminals stuffing money into their pocket whenever they can, acquiring power, acquiring prestige, being reelected, and we don't have a government anymore. And that's simply a reality. And the fact that the FBI is being used to terrorize ordinary people and that there is legislation pending with regard to so-called domestic terrorism, white terrorism. You know, even Arthel Neville and others on Fox News have been calling what went on at the Capitol as domestic terrorism because they're afraid for their own skins. You know what? And they perpetrated this as well because the lies that come forth on Fox News that things are going to happen on Hannity and other shows, and they don't happen, and people see the endemic corruption that's piling up time in and time out, they realize that they're left defenseless. And that's why I wrote the book, It Takes a Scandal Industry, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, because people are being disturbed by cable news. You have to resort to talk radio now to communicate because we have the high-tech companies now who are censoring free speech, that are persecuting conservatives, people of faith, and those believe in the vision of our founding fathers. We have sports leagues that are going along with the flow, you know, perpetrating lies, frankly, about racism in this country and everything else. And we have also the labor unions. We have credit companies that are cutting off credit to people that supported Donald Trump. It's more than a full court press. It's a purge to destroy any opposition to this radical leftist government that has been installed through fraud. And I'll say it, through fraud. No one on Fox News will say it anymore. They've been under orders from Lachlan Murdoch, their leftist leader, to basically run for the exits. The reality is that they want to destroy the left, you and your family and everybody around your family. And it goes to every aspect of society. It's very similar to what happened in World War II with the German industrialists, BMW, Mercedes, Lights, Deutsche Bank, which financed the concentration camps, which killed 6 million people, mostly Jews, but also others. This is what's going on today, is that these leftists, because they appear to be in power, the rest of the country is sucking up to them, getting down on their knees, saying, I will collaborate with you, much like people collaborated with the Nazis, and we will destroy any opposition. And that goes even for entities like the District of Columbia Bar Disciplinary Apparatus, which have been trying to destroy me now for years. They won't succeed because I'm pushing back. But this is the most corrupt state bar in the nation. And then you also have New York, which is the same thing. All of the bar presidents of the D.C. bar, notwithstanding their attacks on me, filed complaints against former attorney Bill Barr, who I didn't even like, for the fact that he withdrew the indictment with regard to General Michael Flynn and made certain remarks on cable news. They did the same thing with Kellyanne Conway. But at the same time, when a complaint was filed against David Kendall, the lawyer for Hillary Clinton, who assisted her in the destruction of 33,000 emails, material evidence, in not just the Benghazi investigation, but in many other matters, that was immediately thrown in the trash. So it's every aspect of society that's trying to kill conservative activism, conservative thought, people of faith, and others who are standing up for the vision and creation of our founding fathers. And what you see this week with regard to what's going on with the FBI, I know they're contacting people who are just simply there. They're threatening them to turn over their cell phones and everything else is to quash any potential opposition to the socialist communist takeover of this country as embodied in President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And I use that term loosely because to me, I'm sorry, they are not my president and vice president. The only person I answer to is God and his son. And you must do the same at this point to save ourselves. I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
In my book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, I make concrete proposals on how we can wage a second American revolution, hopefully peacefully and legally. If we do not succeed at this, clearly we will be entering into a violent revolution. What occurred at the Capitol 2 weeks ago, last Wednesday, was similar to the storming of the Bastille in France on July 14, 1789, not coincidentally the same year that we enacted our Constitution. And the reality is this, is that we are headed in this direction if we don't take immediate action. I'm talking about immediate action. Now, here's what I'm proposing to do. In the next month or so, I am commissioning the Citizens Grand Jury. I'm calling before that grand jury people such as Peter Schweitzer and others. I'm going to ask him to participate. If not, I will send him a subpoena. And we will seek the indictment of Hillary Clinton, of the Obamas, and of course the Bidens for their crimes against this country. But we're going to start with Biden. Sitting on the stage, if you want to call it a stage, in front of the Capitol on January 20th of this year was Hunter Biden. Unbelievable, a complete affront to anything this country stands for in terms of the rule of law or our Constitution. Hunter Biden laundered millions of dollars, perhaps billions, into his family's coffers. As we know, 10% at least we're going to pay for Joe Biden. That would be hundreds of millions of dollars potentially. He has been bought and paid for by the communist Chinese, the same people who brought us through a bioweapon, the pandemic, from which this country is now on its knees, as well as the rest of the world, harmed in terms of health, harmed in terms economically and emotionally. If the Chinese had been there when this Capitol riot ensued, they would have, Capitol riot as fashioned by the left, because it was no riot, they would have murdered everybody that was there, as they did at Tiananmen Square in 1991. They killed 10,000 of their own people who were simply carrying a statue of the Statue of Liberty, a mock-up of it, young students who wanted freedom in this vile communist dictatorship. Now, think about this. Sitting in the Oval Office today, Joe Biden is someone who's been bought and paid for by these communist Chinese butchers of Beijing. This is what we're dealing with. President Trump had to go through 4 years of so-called Russian collusion witch hunts, yet because now the left controls every branch of government thanks to the massive fraud that occurred in the last elections, you can't touch them. And this is what we deal with. So the American people must rise up. We must use citizens' grand juries. Justice Scalia in 1992, in a case United States versus Williams, as I've said many times, said the grand jury belongs to the people of the United States, not the three branches of government. We have the right to commission grand juries. We have the right to indict. We have the right to try. We have the right to seek convictions. We have the right to sentence. We have the right to mete out those sentences with citizens' arrests, which we will seek to do peacefully and legally. I write about that in my book. It takes a revolution. Forget the scandal industry. I go through the history of that. That's something that we're going to be pursuing because we need to reclaim our legal system and clean out the rat's nest, particularly in Washington, D.C. and the state capitals that have subverted our Constitution. And with regard to the Constitution, next spring in May or early June, we're going to have a Third Continental Congress. Yours truly and Freedom Watch will call for that. And we will seek to alter or abolish the current government because it's no government at all. We will form our own government, and we will reenact a Constitution which contains certain protections. We will take immunity away from judges, from public officials, thinking that they can do whatever they please, that they're above the law. We will put into the Constitution a clause for discrimination based on political ideology and belief, because right now it's only based on sex, ethnicity, religion, and other factors. In the Declaration of Independence, it says we can abolish our government and form a new government if it no longer represents us. And that's what we must do. Leave the criminals to commit crimes against each other in Washington. Let's move the Capitol back to Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And let's start again in the vision of our founding fathers. These are some of the things I talk about, not just in my book, but things that have come to light since then. And I want you to join that cause and go to freedomwatchusa.org and join our Justice League and be part of a new peaceful and legal American revolution. I'm going to be right back with Charles Butler, a great black conservative who speaks the truth.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with Charles Butler, who's become my very good friend, my colleague, someone who speaks the truth. He's one of the conservative, he maybe is one of the preeminent ones if not the preeminent one, black conservative, who's not afraid. And, that's really interesting because it's the black conservatives who actually have the guts. It's generally speaking the white people that are running for the exits, frankly. And we need people like Charles that will rise up and help us reclaim our country. And I want to get his thoughts. I talked to him about it before this show with regard to what's going on in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, the city that once was called the city of brotherly love, which unfortunately has become the city of brotherly hate, thanks to the left, which has occupied Philadelphia, which has infested it, frankly, like cockroaches, for lack of a better word. In Philadelphia, you have a district attorney by the name of Larry Krasner, one of my boys. I'm a Jewish Christian, but I'm critical of the Jewish left, which is very, very destructive. Most Jewish people are not that way, but we have to call it out. Someone who was elected with the money of George Soros, a self-hating Jew who confiscated the property along with his father of Jews going to the ovens and gas chambers in World War II on behalf of the Nazis. This is the district attorney of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Then you have a mayor named Jim Kenney, a complete hack, someone who panders to various groups to be able to be reelected and who is an ultra-leftist. And then you had a police commissioner by the name of Richard Ross, who was since been fired over sexual harassment allegations. And they brought in someone for cover from Portland, of all places, where there's total lawlessness. Her name is Danielle Outlaw, a black female who now has become the police commissioner of Philadelphia, who frankly just sits there and just serves as cover for Krasner and the mayor. And what did these people do? These people allegedly fired hundreds of Philadelphia policemen. By the way, my brother was a Philadelphia policeman, so I know what goes on there. I know the problems. But they fired them based upon alleged Facebook posts, which they have not even been shown by the authorities that fired them in Philadelphia, summarily fired them, and at the same time claiming that they were racist and Islamophobic when they don't even have the evidence to say what it is they did was wrong. And they fired them without due process. Ordinarily, if you commit an offense in the police department of Philadelphia, you don't get fired, you get warnings, you get, reprimands or whatever the case may be, and you have your due process rights. This did not happen. And who is it that hacked the social media accounts of my clients? I have 8 policemen in Philadelphia who I represent, and probably more on the horizon. But a group called Plainview, which is likely financed by George Soros, committed a crime by hacking the Facebook accounts of my clients. So I filed a lawsuit. That lawsuit is going forward. I have a co-counsel, Andrew Teitelman, on the case, who lives in Philadelphia. And last week we had a hearing with a judge, and the judge says at the end of the hearing, if you can believe this is Philadelphia, vintage Philadelphia today. It's not going to be Philadelphia in the future. We're going to return it to the city of brotherly love and the birthplace of freedom. He says, well, I hope your clients weren't there at the Capitol riots, showing intense bias and prejudice as to what's going on. And the fact is, and here's the irony, is that I believe that the police who were there, my clients weren't there, but I believe the Capitol Police let the Americans into the Capitol. After all, we, the American people, own that Capitol. And the police have been so trashed over the years. And sure, there are bad eggs, and Charles will talk about this. But you know what? Equal rights cuts both ways. Doesn't matter whether you're a white cop or a black cop or a black person or a white person or green, yellow, or blue. We all have to play by the same rules that were established by our founding fathers. So this is what we're dealing with today. And as I mentioned, Charles, during the first segment, introduced this morning in the House of Representatives is legislation, Nancy Pelosi style, basically saying that white terrorists, domestic terrorists, were responsible for what happened on Capitol Hill, and they're going to be hunted down and prosecuted and thrown in a slammer where the sun don't shine with the key thrown away. So you see what's happening today. I want to get your thoughts on it. What's been going on with regard to what happened on Capitol Hill, which I believe was a natural reaction of people realizing that all three branches, particularly the judicial branch, which abandoned President Trump, sold him out, even his own judges, are corrupt to the core. Charles, take it away.
Larry, we talked about PA and what's going on in PA, but it's great to have people like you who will stand up and defend folks, because most attorneys are cowering in their shoes. They don't go out and exercise practicing law. They practice exercising, setting themselves up for judgeships and cush jobs. It's all I can say is God bless you, man, and for this, for what you do and how you defend people. It's terrible what happens to these police officers, and they should have their day in court, no question. And we all should have our day in court. But when we look at police officers, they hold a very unique position in society. And the number one uniqueness is they're the only people in our society who can legally kill a person without due process. So as far as I'm concerned, these people have to be above reproach, above personal biases, all that other stuff. Cops used to be pretty good. They were bad cops, good cops, but by and by, they were pretty good cops. But this money and drugs totally corrupted the American landscape, and we've had a lot of bad policing going on, especially in black neighborhoods, where criminals are given, they won't arrest a drug dealer on the street corner, but they'll stop me, law-abiding citizen, who didn't use a left turn signal or right turn signal to make a turn at the corner that the guy's selling the drugs on.
Well, I get what you're saying. There's bad apples in every group, and I understand every entity gets corrupted. That's for sure. That's the natural manure, as Thomas Jefferson would say. I might add, one caveat of someone who can actually kill someone without due process or accountability, and that's Hillary Clinton. 80 people died during the administration, and most lately, Jeffrey Epstein. I think they're the number one suspects for the Epstein murder, frankly, given Bill's trips, to Fantasy Island with Epstein. But
Well,
and by the way,
Judge
if you want to kill somebody and get away with it, go to the District of Columbia, where 80% of the homicides are unsolved. So let's talk about what's going on in the rampant.
And that's because the citizens are unarmed. They're prey. Now you have to understand, Larry, the only reason that those statistics are so high and that crime is so high is because D.C. will not issue a concealed carry permit for law-abiding citizens. When D.C. put that, eliminated handguns and concealed carry, and it was illegal to carry a gun, D.C. went up from like the 20s in homicides to number one and number two behind Chicago, which had also eliminated citizens carrying guns to protect themselves. Chicago used to be like 11 in homicides. It went to number one, number two. So D.C., Chicago, number one, number two, because they refused to allow law-abiding citizens to protect themselves, to keep them from shooting criminals, because they were killing black men and putting black men in jail. How crazy is that?
Well, and that's a problem. We've talked about black on black crime. Of course, it's been out there. Obama refused to address it. Biden and Harris won't address it. In fact, Biden has even been called by Kamala Harris a white racist in the past. So
he is.
Who knows what's going to do? Yeah, he is a racist. You're right. He is a racist, and they're all racist.
This guy is on tape using the N-word. This guy is on tape saying he didn't want his children to go to school in a what did he call it? A racial jungle. Man, please. This is a guy who was on the floor of the Senate bragging about his state was a slave state, and that's why he has something in common with Strom Thurmond and Senator Eastland, because my state was a slave state too. He uses either Southern dialect, and these Negroes went out and voted for him with their dumb ass because they are Democrat. I'm a Democrat. Black folks are so stupid.
Well, I would say the Jewish left is in the same league, and they've become allies, and so you and I come from a similar perspective, Charles. It's not even hypocrisy. People call it hypocrisy. It's dishonesty. It's rank corruption. It's a disrespect for our Constitution, for the rule of law, and the vision of our founding fathers that all people are created equal. And they play this game, and they're pitting one party against another, one group against another, one race, one religion, one sex.
You know what
it's unbelievable. I mean, and now, okay, we got to fill the government with transgenders and everything else. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, fine, if a transgender is qualified, let them be in there, but not because they're a transgender. And it's beyond control.
Well, the bottom line is, listen. The bottom line is transgenderism is a mental illness. Any guy that wants to cut off his penis, and like those people have the highest suicide rates. 99.9% of men who have a sexual organ transplant or gender change or sex change, whatever you call it, 99.9% of them regret it. I mean, what kind of craziness is that?
I was going to say, but in the black and the Jewish community,
wait a minute, where's the science on that? In the Jewish
community, Charles, to throw in some sad irony and humor, is that the Jewish left and the black left, basically they're missing their private parts in any event. So it's these people have no cojones. Basically, and they run for the fences. That's what I'm saying. Look what happened in Washington, D.C., 2 weeks ago, Wednesday. This was not a violent revolt. Okay, I'm sorry. There were a couple bad people in there, okay. But the majority of the people were rising up because they had it. And these little sissies in Washington, D.C., because now they have to walk down the street and look who's walking behind them, and they created that condition. Now they want to wage a purge and an inquisition of anybody who they think may challenge their view of what this country should be about. And their view of what this country is about is socialism and communism and atheism. That's my take. Brother?
Yeah.
Okay. They have no private parts, so they're no different than transgenders. That's the thing. Silence. Okay. Silence is
well,
gold.
I mean, I don't have anything to say to that, but I do think that I'm tired of Black Lives Matter co-opting Black Lives Matter because of lesbians and transgenders driving the agenda. I saw this lady who's represented Black Lives Matter named Rhodes. Her last name was Rhodes, Phoenix Rhodes. She's a photographer. She's a lesbian. She claims she's a mother. And I'm going, this is sick. But she's Black Lives Matter and the transgender agenda. I am tired of people trying to co-opt real racial issues for their nonsense. LGBT does not belong as a civil right or anything else. And these black folks who are living in sin, they need to go live in their own sin. I can't help it if they're black and sinful and immoral. That's not my issue. My issue is real racism. Anyway.
Yeah, my view is, what people do in their homes, do it in their homes. That's fine. But don't push it on us, okay? And don't make it a political movement. Charles, you've been a great, great patriot. You're somebody I admire a great deal. You say the truth. You're not afraid. We're going to have you back, and I hope to do more things with you in the future, good friend. So God bless you.
You too.
And
you too, man.
I'll be on your show later this week.
Okay.
Take care. We'll be right back with The Verdict and Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Here's the verdict, ladies and gentlemen. It's an inquisition. It's a purge. Anyone who's a conservative, libertarian, person of faith, or believes in the vision and creation of our founding fathers has now been scheduled for extinction, for extermination, in fact, in a very clever way, borrowing a page from Adolf Hitler, a full court press, a complete effort to wipe out freedom of speech, liberty, and social justice. Yes, lose the term social justice from our society. Every aspect of it. I want you to read my column this week at WND.com, because I'm going to write about the District of Columbia Bar, which is part of this whole thing, because they want to squash the ability of any lawyer to stand up to them. Because our country now is under a socialist and communist state. It's going to get worse. 17 executive orders in just 2 days, opening our borders, closing down the construction of the border wall, killing the Alaska oil pipeline, opening the country up for attacks from foreign adversaries, appointing people to renegotiate, if you want to call it that, the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. Everything that President Trump did in 4 years, nearly, has now been destroyed and thrown in the trash can. And then they want to destroy us on top of it. And that's why I wrote my book, It Takes a Revolution. I saw this coming. I knew it was going to happen. Not just the election fraud, but I knew this leftist takeover was going to occur. And every radical group, radical blacks, radical Jewish Marxians of the left, radical Muslims, radical atheists, radical gays, lesbians, and transgenders, radical atheists, they're all banding together because they want to take this country apart, just hand it out. There'll be nothing left. Stock market's going to crash, believe me, in the next few months as this continues on. And we, the American people, will be left with nothing. And the politicians in Washington, D.C., who Ronald Reagan said perhaps the second oldest profession is giving the first oldest profession a bad name, meaning politicians and whores, that they're both the same. These people are in it for themselves, as are the federal judges, and as are some judges in the state courts. And the American people are left out there in the cold to eat crumbs as they feast on their prey. And just like happened in France in the days, years and months leading up to the French Revolution, which culminated in the storming of the Bastille, and later when King Louis XV and Marie Antoinette were taken over by the hordes who've had enough and taken to the guillotines at Place de la Concorde in the middle of Paris and beheaded. If we don't arrest what's going on right now peacefully and legally, that same fate will occur in this country. It's just a matter of time. And that's why I want you to go out and get my book and read it and take it seriously. It takes a revolution. Forget the scandal industry. Turn off Hannity, turn off Fox News, purveyors of falsity. If you're a conservative, a libertarian, or person of faith, they're not talking for the American people. They're talking to make money for themselves. And even people like Mike Lindell of MyPillow now have been squashed and destroyed. So this is something that you need to keep in mind. But I want you to remember what it says in the Declaration of Independence. And I've been saying this over and over again, but I want it to sink in. When in the course of human events, the sovereign, the rulers, fail to represent the interests of the people have a right, under the laws of nature and nature's God, to alter and abolish that government and to form a new government with equal rights by and for the people in pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Jefferson was more eloquent, but that's what he wrote, and that's what our founding fathers adopted in our Declaration of Independence. So we're going to take our country back to Philadelphia. We're going to squeeze the leftists out, the people like the DA Krasner and the mayor and the police chief, and we're going to reclaim Philadelphia peacefully and legally, and we're going to start a new government by and for the people and leave the criminals to commit crimes against each other in Washington, D.C. They can have it. The place looks like Disneyland anyway. Independence Hall is the real Americana in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I urge you all to go and see that we had both our Congress, our president, and our Supreme Court in that one place when we began the greatest creation ever known to mankind, the United States of America. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. God bless you.
You might not think that a few simple words could make you crave McDonald's breakfast sandwiches. But if you listen closely to the sound of me saying McGriddles, McMuffin, you might be wrong. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hey, it's your home, and I need to ask you a few favors. In the kitchen, there's a spider stuck between the window and the screen, and I know it's dead, and technically it's outside, but it's still freaking me out. Can you flick it out or something? Also, just to save some money, and it's super easy, could you bundle your home and car insurance with Geico? Last thing, could you take the holiday decorations down? Yeah, I'm one of those.
Geico. For bundling made easy, go to geico.com today.
Hi, Little Bob here to let you know that my Bobapedic mattresses offer the comfort and quality of a national mattress brand for half the price. No matter your budget, there's a Bobapedic Memory Foam Hybrid or Hybrid Plus mattress for you. But don't take it from me. Check them out at mybobs.com. mybobs.com. mybobs.com.